Hi, I'm Deno Emili, class of 1978, and you're watching Dingo Talk.
You wanna know by now. You wanna know by now. You wanna know by now. You wanna know.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is the DingoTalk Alumni Tour. My guest this week is Deno Emili.
Pretty good.
Class of 1978. Deno, thank you.
No, absolutely. Thank you. Just think how much trouble you would have had with that if you weren't Italian.
Well, with a lot of pronunciations of Guadagnino, and I told you that when we met. It's one of those I have to make sure I at least get close.
Yeah.
So let's take you back to 1974.
Yes.
Senior in high school.
Yes.
Why Bethany? How do you end up at Bethany? How do you end up in this corner of the woods?
Sure. No, I went to Latrobe Senior High School, spent 4 years there after moving to Latrobe. And I had a cousin who played football here and was a guy I looked up to. And he was here 9 years ahead of me. So that's the first and only reason I'd ever heard of Bethany. His name's John Mullen. He's actually on the Board of Trustees right now. But yeah, I knew John, heard of Bethany from him. So when I was looking into where to go to school, I was going to major in communications, and I researched on whatever computer facilities we had available to us in 1974. I can't imagine we had anything, but the couple of names that got churned out were Syracuse, which is rather renowned for that, and Bethany. So I went to a college fair at Greensburg High School, next school over, and Walter Bortz was there. And he and I talked for a good bit of time about me coming to Bethany to be a sports writer, which is what I wanted to do. So he arranged a trip. And he arranged a trip for myself and a good friend of mine who was thinking about Bethany and W&J. And so we came down together. Walt had us stay at the SAE house. As we're approaching Bethany after spending the day at W&J, we had to stop the car while a farmer crossed his pigs across the road. And my buddy's mother looked at him. We were both with our moms. And she said, "There's no way you're going to this school." So he ended up turning around and going back home. And he went to W&J, became a doctor. I came here, and Walt put us up at the SAE house, or put me up at the SAE house, and they were having a mixer, I think with the Zetas, and it was Monday Night Football, and so I had all my favorite things. There was beer, there was football, and there were co-eds. And I said,
it's a pretty good visit.
This is, Walt, you sold me, man. This is where I'm coming to school. So that's how I ended up here.
So you said that you wanted to come. You were coming in to be a sports writer. Is that what you stayed with your whole time at Bethany?
No. I was a sports writer under the legendary Dave Sims for one semester, and I realized that if you wanted to do that for a living, you had to be able to type, and that was a skill set I had not developed in high school. So I bounced around. I was a biology major for 2 weeks until I realized I couldn't stand the sight of blood.
Okay.
And then I went to math until I got to Calc 3, which didn't agree with me. So I settled on psychology, which was really a good fit for me. It gave me the opportunity to think a lot and talk a lot and not really have to develop any particular skill sets.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. Sorry, all you psych majors out there.
It's like a backhanded compliment. Like, it was really good for me, but I didn't really have to do much.
Nah, that was it. So I had some great experiences here as a psych major. Back then we had 4 practicums we had to do that would be somewhat related to our major. So I spent a year going down to the former Moundsville State Penitentiary and interacting with the inmates and the staff at the prison, and that left an impact for sure. That was something very impactful. But really, what I think about when I think of Bethany is my work at the athletic department. I worked as a work-study person in the athletic department for 4 years. I was a manager for the football team for a couple years, worked as a manager for the basketball team. And the on-field or on-court duties weren't all that rigorous, but the good part about it was I got to drive the college vans to the games.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the basketball team, that meant, having a van load of players and going to, all the hot spots, Hiram, Teal, Case Western, John Carroll, because all of those schools were in our conference back then.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think we're just down to Teal out of that group. And then for the football team, it was a terrible job. I had to drive the cheerleaders to the games.
Oh
and back.
man, they really twisted your arm for that one.
That was terrible. But that's I will say that led to me being fired for the first time in my life. Bob Goyne called me in one Monday morning after a road game and said, "Dino, understand that you stopped and bought beer with the cheerleaders on the way back from the game." And I said, "Well, yes, sir, I did." And he said, "Well, I'm going to have to let you go." And I said, "I understand that, Mr. Goyne." But they allowed me to come back for basketball. So I continued to work on the basketball team, but that was the end of my football career. So, lesson to all you kids out there.
Is the lesson not to admit that you actually did it, or is the lesson
absolutely, yeah, that's absolutely the lesson.
Don't admit that you picked up the beer.
Never say yes to something like that. Oh my goodness!
Only if you're in a school van. Don't say it.
That was really, and I had other fun experiences. Back then the equestrian program was affiliated with Ogilvy like it is today.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have the facility here, and so part of my job was to drive students over to Ogilvy to ride the horses and such. So it was a really good gig. Even as a freshman, it got me to meet a lot of people that I wouldn't have otherwise met here at school. It opened my horizons socially right away to all the folks in the athletic department, including the students that were participating in sports. And that led to my rushing beta. And, that was the big turning point in my career here. I've never denied the fact that I probably would not have lasted more than one, maybe 2 semesters if I hadn't pledged beta.
Well, so you bring that up. What's the Greek life dynamic at that point, and why beta? Is it just because of your group of friends that you created, or did you look at any other house, or was beta? Beta was it.
That was it.
Okay,
that was it. It was the group of guys that particularly were the basketball players at that time. And by the way, a little promo: we're having an alumni reunion for the '78 basketball team in a couple of weeks on February 18th, 19th, and 20th. So all those guys will be back to spend the weekend on campus. But yeah, those were my friends, and I did not look at other houses. I think I was in the Sigma Nu house once and the Alpha Sig house once. And obviously there's some great folks then and now that were associated with those groups. But for me, it was never anything but beta. So that was the big factor for me remaining here at Bethany. And then obviously, as we get into my history a little bit more, everybody will come to understand that it's much more than that these days. But that's still a very meaningful relationship for me.
It's a cornerstone for what your Bethany is.
Absolutely. And the Greek life back then, you asked. I think the statistic was when I was here, 90+% of the men affiliated and half the women.
Okay.
My years at the Beta House, we had 72 men in Beta.
So it wasn't
3 classes.
It wasn't the grouping that we had. I mean, and the houses are doing what they can, but those numbers the expectations have been dropped here at Bethany because of enrollment. But is that also? Do you see it? And I'm fast forwarding a little bit in being on campus and what. Do you see maybe Greek life isn't where people are going anymore? Is that kind of a statistic
no
across?
Question. That's no question. It's a universal statistic across North America that affiliations with fraternities and sororities are down, partly because it got a bad image in those years when I was here and thereafter, partly because it's a different student today. They don't look toward that kind of social experience. I have 2 kids who are 29 and 33, and neither one of them would have affiliated. My son went to Penn State where they had a Beta chapter at the time, and he said, "Dad, they have a beautiful house, but beyond that, there's nothing there that's going to entice me to become a Beta. Sorry." And I understood that.
Yeah.
I understood that. But yeah, so it is a different environment. Back then, and I know we'll talk about the fact that it's maybe even truer now, there wasn't anything else to do here.
No.
And yes, young people back then, the drinking age in West Virginia was 18.
Yeah. So it's a whole different ball game when
it's
you're
a
talking.
whole different ball game.
That's why the bar was successful in both hands that it was in, and for as long as it was, is the drinking age was 18. And that's I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think we've had so many alumni on the show where we talk about Bubba's, and we talk about what you were able to do on campus before that law changed, and then subsequently, I mean, my time at Bethany was Bubba's, because you felt safe where you knew you weren't going to get in trouble for anything.
Right.
Wow. Not that you weren't going to get in trouble for anything, but you weren't going to get in trouble for the thing you were doing in the bar.
Yeah.
But I just think it's a good part to say that a lot of people came to school here. The drinking age was 18, so you were coming in as an adult. You were able to do things.
Right. And I think at that time, the footprint of the student draw was bigger. And for example, in New York at that time, the drinking age was 18, and it was probably true along the East Coast in some places. So we had a lot of students from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and I'm not saying they came here because the drinking age was 18, but it was one less thing to have them reconsider why they were coming here. And so did we drink more now than maybe students here do today? Probably. But we didn't make such a big deal about it.
No, drinking, it was just what you did.
Well, we had a refrigerator in the Beta house that had a keg in it with a tap. And so if you wanted to have a beer in the middle of the afternoon, you just went and poured yourself one. You threw a quarter in the till, and that was that.
And it's not, I think that's another good point, is that it's such a sensationalized thing. Like, you got to drink, or you got to show everybody that you're drinking.
Right.
And I don't know if maybe I fit into a different generation, because I drink to drink. I don't drink to tell people that I drink.
Right. But there are different personality types that do a lot of things just to be able to show that they do it.
Well, but you brought up the other social aspects, and we touched on one of them was Bubba's, and we'll get to Bubba's, but especially with you guys being basically next door neighbors or catty corner. Some other social aspects, though, because I mean the sporting events were always attended.
Yes.
During your time, there was still the homecoming parade where everybody that was a big deal, correct? I mean,
Absolutely.
People worked for weeks, sometimes maybe months, on getting their float together for where they were going to. Now, what was that experience like for those because I experienced one, and it was basically we put signs on the side of the trucks and waved at people and dressed up goofy.
Anything that you could get behind as a group was people approached it very passionately. So whether it was the homecoming experience or Greek Sing or, pick any event, certainly the sporting events, the concerts. I look back through the old yearbooks when I was here, and I can't believe the groups that we had.
And who were some of the people?
Well, we had Charlie Daniels, we had the Eagles, there were John Sebastian.
You bring up a good, that's a hot topic. There's a name in there that you said. There's a hot topic question. I believe the song is called Tequila Sunrise. Tequila
Sunrise was an Eagles song, and legend has it that, I don't know if it was Don Henley or Glenn Fry, but it was written by one of them while they were here. Supposedly.
We've never gotten there's no confirmation on that.
No confirmation of that.
From the Facebook groups and some of the Bethany folklore, and we have Frank, and you have Larry Grimes' Ghost Stories, and the other one is Tequila Sunrise is about Bethany.
Yeah. So that's legend. That's what do they call it? Urban myth, maybe.
It's our urban legend.
What I can tell you about music and concerts back then was Barry Manilow was here one weekend. I think it was homecoming. There was a show here Friday night that was the typical country rock band. I don't even remember who it was, but I mean, we just had an awesome time. Barry Manilow comes out on Saturday night, and God bless him, he's been incredibly successful. We booed him off the stage after 2 songs. Literally, the poor guy got up and left. Now,
just because that's such a change from the night
oh
before
my
to
gosh.
and Saturday's more. Friday's always. I don't know if it was this way back in the day, but Friday is more of the everybody gets back. Let's have a good time.
Yeah.
And then Saturday is
a little more out of control.
Hey, well, Sunday will be here and we'll recover then.
Yes.
Let's go.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So that one isn't mythical or legend that isn't substantiated. I was sitting there. Yeah.
So Bethany College students booed Barry Man. I don't know is that clickbait? Barry Manilow gets booed off.
I don't know.
Hear the story.
Hear the story here. Yeah. So, maybe not something to be proud
of. Bubba's. Yeah. Bubba's obviously played and it's Bubba's when you're here. It's not Frank's place. No, it's Frank's place.
You want me to go off on that topic?
Is it page one? Is it page?
It was, we who lived above the bar and worked at the bar called it the Enterprise because that's what Frank called it.
Yep.
Because that was the name of his business generally. Everybody else called it Frank's.
Okay.
And yes, I frequented the place my freshman and sophomore years, but one of the problems the Beta had at that time, because there were 70 of us, we couldn't find places to live. The Beta house then was 2 stories and it accommodated somewhere between 30 and 40 people. The other 30 of us had to live wherever we could live. So we had a group of 4 of us who lived above the bar. Mm-hmm. And there were 3 or 4 apartments up there. There were 4 Betas, 2 of my dear friends who were Sigma News, and a couple of women who worked for Frank at the bar. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it was Frank's. And it was Frank's for the first 3 years I was here, and I worked there my junior year. After my junior year, Frank paid me to stick around for a month or so and do some landscaping and some cleanup because he was selling it. Mm-hmm. And he was selling it to Bill Reed, who most people know as Bubba. Mm-hmm. And the name lives on, even though Bill's been gone for a good while.
11 years now.
Yeah, it's still Bubba's to everybody. But, so I stuck around for a month, probably as enjoyable a month as I had on campus, even though the other parts of the 4 years were great.
Yeah.
But being here alone and experiencing the town.
It's such a different experience when you're here, especially summertime whenever it breaks.
Yeah.
When everything clears out, it's almost a...
Yes.
And then, 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, it gets redundant. Your days just kind of run together.
There's so much you can do.
And then all of a sudden, you're in August. I mean, you go through that. I'm sure you went through the heat.
Yeah.
July and August in Bethany
it's
humid.
It's tough. It's tough, but it was a great experience, and I have Frank to thank for a lot. We did some work for him at a home he was rehabbing down in some part of West Virginia that I don't think I've been to since. I think it was down near 100.
Okay.
And I know that there was no road to it, so we had to take the 4-wheel drive vehicles and go through neighbors' yards and farms to get to the place. And the guys, my brothers and I, who lived above the bar, went down there with Frank one long weekend and rehabbed a house that he had bought. But he was. I can't exactly call him a mentor.
Yeah.
But he was a good guy to be associated with in my time here. I knew a lot about Frank's and Bubba's, and that was a big part of my experience here.
Now, before we get to the last question of this part of the show, do you think, as an alumni, that hurts Bethany with it not being open anymore, or do you think that that because of, we talked about with the drinking age being 18, that now it's not socially acceptable? And I think people, when they hear there's a bar in town that it's a college bar and they serve the underage kids, they're only hearing they're serving underage kids and not understanding our students aren't on the, and they're not kids, I shouldn't say that. Our students aren't on the roads. They're most of us, if we walked anywhere, it was either the proverbial drunk path, back if you lived in CV. My preference was the through Chambers Alley, up past the CAF, and then through the middle up to Alpha Sig.
Yeah.
That has to take a worry out of, as a college, as an official with the college, that has to take a worry when there's a place and you're not going to have students on the roads and have to worry about, because we know what college students are going to do. That stat doesn't have to be. All of us know what we did when we were in college. So the thought process of I can't believe my child would. Come on, let's all just. But is that a problem that Bethany is facing?
I think it is.
And it's more a town problem too, right? It's not just the college.
It's a town problem. It's a college problem, and it's not just a drinking problem. It's a social problem. And I'll speak to my bias. Kids these days have enough trouble socializing because they're always on their phones or their laptops or whatever. They need a place to hang out. And I don't care if the place were dry. They still need a place to go.
And being off campus gives them, it's not...
Yes.
The college isn't going to...
Right.
And that was always the thing with us, because Chuck was Chuck.
Oh, yeah.
Chuck would not be shy about telling you, this is not the college, this is Bubba's.
Yeah.
And then Bison in, but it was still Bubba's.
Yeah.
But I know from working there, from spending my time through college there, that a lot of people, it's the college's bar. It's the college's bar. And it's, if you thought about it logically, like, why would the college run a bar and serve all of us? Like,
I gotta tell you,
that wouldn't be.
No, and it certainly wasn't in anybody's contemplation when I was here that the college owned that place. Now maybe it was because I knew Frank so well that I knew the college didn't own.
Well,
the
I think
place.
when Bubba died and that it changed hands, and it took on the Bison in. The logo was the Bison with everything.
Right. Which I would, by the way, as an attorney, would never have allowed to happen.
That seems like a no. And we'll get into you being an attorney. I think this is. And the reason I wanted to go into the question about Bubba's is because for a long time there were four businesses right on Main Street, right? Because you had Jack Hoffman's dad had the barbershop.
Yes.
Which is now apartments. You had Chambers.
Yes.
You had, it wasn't the College Inn at the time, right? It was
Emily's
something. Emily's. M's.
Well,
Emily's?
M's was the bar outside
the
of
garden.
town, but this place was E something, some woman's
Ev's?
name.
Maybe something,
maybe.
but I knew that was
obviously I didn't frequent it as much as Frank's, but I
and
do
then
remember
you had Frank's,
right?
The
Enterprise,
Bubba's, whatever anybody wants to say.
It was.
Now that we're here in 2022, and the only place left is Chambers.
Yes.
Let's talk about some story. Do you have any stories from Chambers? I know you went in there before the show. You got your shirt, which we're going to promote.
I got my T-shirt. I'll hold it up later. No, Chambers. I mean, first of all, again, it all starts at the same place. Mr. Chambers, the Chambers back then was a beta, so we were going in there to patronize them.
Yes,
whatever. But they really were the only outpost. You're right. There was a barbershop, and I got Mr. Hoffman to cut my hair a lot. But that's a barbershop. It's great to have, but and there was a gas station. When I was here because Bill Hanna, who owned the gas station, actually serviced my car that I had down here. He spent several weeks trying to take care of the timing belt that I busted. But so there was the gas station as well, which I don't know how this place functions without a gas station.
It's a geographical anomaly. It's 6 miles from everything. Yeah. And 12 miles to a gas station.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a car person. I'm driving an hour and 15 minutes every day from Pittsburgh to get here now until we move. So, I'm a car person, and not having a gas station would drive me crazy. But anyway, there were a number of businesses, but Chambers was the universal go-to. We had the Boomers / Beehive / barn that was up on the campus, and that was great for a midnight snack or a late afternoon snack. But just to have a place where you could go and get stuff, and it really is like their slogan: if they don't have it, you don't need it.
You don't.
Because I've been going in there almost every day since I've come back.
That's my line, by the way. But I'm glad you threw it in there, because now I get to say it again. They'll hear it twice. And you're going to hold the shirt up. They're going to see it. We got all the bases covered today. We're
covering everything for the guys. But it really is the place where you can get anything. I started to tell myself when I came back 5 weeks ago, I'm not going to be spending money all the time when I'm down here. And I'm thinking, of course you're not. There's nowhere to spend it. But if you go into Chambers,
you're going to spend money.
You're going to spend money because anything you want. I bought a box of cereal in there. I bought the T-shirt in there. I've gone to get the chili at lunchtime on Wednesdays. So there's always. I mean, they have something I forget what it's called, but if you pick it up like this, you can turn pages and read it.
Newspaper.
They
sell a newspaper. I look at it every morning when I have my coffee.
So yeah, there's nothing you can't get there. And
then your every nut, bolt, and screw that you could ever think of. I mean, they still have the old school box where it's just a wall of holes and you pull a box.
Just pull out what you need. So yeah, that's been a mainstay for us, for anybody who went to school here, and it's bittersweet that they're all that's left. I mean, I looked at the sign today, since 1917. I mean, other than the college itself, there isn't much that's been around here or anywhere else since 1917.
No.
And for a business like that, and I was in commercial real estate, so I was a retail guy. For a business like that to survive the last 2 years speaks volumes.
For what they are and what they mean to the area. And it's interesting you brought that up. We talked to Harry just after the beginning of the pandemic. Actually, no, I believe we talked to Harry just prior to the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it's funny, when I talk to him, every once in a while I asked him, just because people ask me, well, how did the pandemic affect him? He had people from Waynesburg, Claysville. I mean, he had people from around, you're talking Washington people.
Yeah.
That were coming down here, maybe because of the toilet paper. He never ran out of toilet paper. He never ran out of paper towels. And he had that stuff.
That was big.
But he also got people in the way that they are, where you walk back to the back of the deli. I believe, didn't you had a story, I thought, Hal Newman had a story. I just interviewed him.
Yeah.
But before he got to the deli, Bob Chambers already had the sandwich ready for him because he knew what Hal was going to order.
Give me the regular.
And that was, I go in every day. I have 2 cups of coffee. I have a BS session with Harry and whoever's in the, Floyd or Coach Garv or any of those other guys that are in the store all the time. And then, go about your day. But that's how I start my day. It's part of the routine.
Yeah.
Now, for most of you that have watched the show, Dino took basically all of my promos and ran them all at once because of all the things that he gets. But at this portion of the show, we normally would send it to Harry Chambers of Chambers General Store, as he said, established in 1917. And they really do. If they don't have it, you don't need it. It's the facts. Breakfast sandwiches, daily lunch specials, biscuits and gravy, soups every day until Harry decides he doesn't want to make soup anymore for the year. He'll make a $1 sandwich or a hoagie in front of you with whatever you want from the lunch meat. And while you're doing that, if you need to fix your house or you need some drywall or anything, he'll point you in the direction.
Or feed your pet.
Yeah, that's true. You get everything right.
I noticed that because I have a dog, and sometimes I got to bring home the bacon for him.
And it's a quick pickup, and like you said, it's convenient and it's been here. It's a staple of the town. But I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is the Dingo Talk Alumni Tour. Deno Emili. I think I got it wrong again.
Pretty close.
That was close. I'm getting better.
That's good.
Well, we'll be right back. I'm going to see if I can get this right the first time. But we'll be right back, Chuckleheads.
You're watching another exciting episode of Dingo Talk, recorded deep in the hidden lair in Bethany, West Virginia, where when you visit, make sure you stop by Chambers General Store. Grab one of our hot breakfast sandwiches made fresh all day. Don't forget the biscuits and gravy or one of the daily lunch specials. And if none of that trips your trigger, cold cut sub sandwiches and wraps made fresh all day to your order. Hey, and don't be the only alumni on the block that doesn't have the Chambers. If we don't have it, you don't need it t-shirt, or the latest edition of the Bethany, West Virginia shroom capital of the world in the psychedelic green. Hey, now back to you, Carlo.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is the Dingo Talk Alumni Tour. My guest, Deno Emili, class of 1978. We left off. We talked about the social aspect. We talked about Greek life. We didn't really touch on the academics, but
I didn't touch on them much when I was it came
I told you when we met last week, we're similar in a lot of things, so I just figured that was a good, but we have to touch on one academic thing. It's another staple of what the institution is and what it means to graduate from Bethany.
Yes.
Comps, the little blue books. We sit, 2 days in the writing and then 1 day sitting in front of a panel. My first question about comps Do you feel that the oral part of comps prepares Bethany students more for what a professional interview or business meetings are going to be like, because you're pitching why and what you've learned and all that?
Absolutely. It's the most valuable part, or one of the more valuable parts of a Bethany education, and I only wish we could do it for students, every week. Because when you get out of school, wherever you go to school, and whether you go on to graduate school or anything else afterwards, the number one skill set still today is being able to communicate. And to be able to sit there in front of professors whom you interacted with on a very different level than you are at that point in your academic career is invaluable. It's definitely a big plus for this school.
Now, do you have any interesting stories? What was the studying? As we touched at the beginning there, maybe we didn't touch enough on school. But what was the studying tactic for comps?
No, and I will say I'm not trying to dumb myself down.
No,
I think records show I had a 3.86. But I attribute that completely to the fact that I had an amazing memory back then. That was before, many years of doing dumb things to help facilitate the loss of that. But I would sit in class and not take notes, and then just go back and remember everything. And it's a gift from God, or maybe the devil. But so I did well academically, and I did put in the work where I needed to. As far as comps, I studied. But I was so engrossed in my psychology courses that so much of it was second nature.
Okay.
That I didn't have to prepare and spend a lot of time. The other plus was I took them in January. So I was here working for the basketball team, and other than doing my 2 hours of practice a day or however long the road trips or games would take, I had all the time I needed to study, and certainly nobody was going to bother me.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the people on campus were, for the most part, taking January term classes, or they were athletes, and so they were doing their own thing, and I was free to concentrate on studying as much as necessary. So
now, and are you studying above? You're still living above the bar?
No, at that point I was in the Beta House. I went back to the Beta House for my senior year. Actually, spent the first semester senior year in what we called M&M. McLean McEachran, which is now where the Erickson Alumni Center is, where my office is. But then January term and second semester, I wanted to live in the house. So I went back to the Beta House, and it was, there were 4 basketball players and myself, basically. So I had a quiet environment.
And is there any interesting stories that come from your comps days?
My heart was in my throat when I walked in for my orals. Not because I wasn't prepared, but I took 1 semester of German my first semester senior year, just as a schedule filler. And I had a gift for languages back then, I guess. We had a 2-hour final, and it was scheduled for 1 o'clock on a Sunday, and the Steelers had a playoff game at 1 o'clock on Sunday.
We're missing it.
I wasn't missing it. So I went into that test, and Mrs. Nelson was the professor, and she handed out the tests, and I finished it in 10 minutes. And it was a 2-hour final. And I knew I nailed it. I knew I had them all right. So I ran up, handed it in, and booked out of there. And she gave me the dirtiest look because, of course, she probably thought I had the answers before the test or something. Well, I walk into my orals, and she's one of the 3 professors there because it's January, and nobody else is around. And she happened to live in the community or nearby. So I walk in, and I thought, I hope she doesn't have much to say. And as it turned out, I did okay. But yeah, being a psych major here in the 70s was like where you wanted to be. We had John Hall, who is still here, God bless him, and Gail Thompson and Trevor Pierce. And it was a great major for someone who was interested in humanity at a point in time where that necessarily hadn't become real popular yet. So yeah, I enjoyed it, and I did fine on my comps. And I have friends who have never passed their comps, and that really causes me a great deal of pain, but I would never say we should do away with them.
No,
never.
No, because it's as much as it's a scary thing when you're freshmen probably are sitting there. It's not a scary thing to them.
No.
Sophomore sitting there, it's a little closer, but it's not scary.
Yeah.
it's second semester junior year, you start realizing, oh
Yeah.
my God, that test is coming.
Yeah.
And
you
it's
know-
like a battle wound almost. We all went. It's
yeah. It's part of being here. Like pledging a fraternity was part of being here back when that was a difficult challenge.
Yeah.
Editorial comment: it's not anymore. But then I'm old school. But yeah, I would say that I don't know what the percentage is, but I, for one, certainly didn't know anything about comps when I enrolled here and showed up the first day. But
I feel like a lot of people were into that.
it's a
same-
rite of passage to
Yeah.
be a Bethany grad. So yeah, invaluable.
Well, so what led you to a career in law post Bethany?
Well, I mentioned earlier, I think that my practicum experience included time at Moundsville State Prison.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with the prison psychologist, and of course I was a psych major, so that made sense. And I also worked with the warden. And so I thought, I wouldn't mind being in that industry, but I want to be the warden. I don't want to be the psychologist.
Yeah.
He takes orders from the warden.
You want to be
So,
the guy.
I want to be a guy. So I'm talking with some friends at one point my senior year, and I mentioned that aspiration. And one guy said, well, why don't you just go to law school? That never occurred to me. He said, it's 1 year longer. You're going to be much more well-rounded than if you go to schools to get a degree in criminal justice or whatever, a master's in criminal justice. He said, go to law school. You can still do that if you want to, but you can end up doing something else. Well, I got into law school, and after 1 year of the basic courses, I knew that wasn't going to be the direction I went.
Okay.
And so, like most law students, you look for a job your second or at least your third year so that you get some practical experience. And the one that really fell into my lap was working at General Nutrition Centers in their real estate department. And so I was involved in negotiating leases for their stores.
Yeah.
And after about 6 months, a position came open to be the person who traveled around to find sites for the stores. And they offered that to me, and I jumped at it. And so I've been in commercial real estate both as a broker, I have a broker's license, and as an attorney, and I'm licensed in PA to do that, for 41 years. And I was blessed with the ability to travel and see, I think I've been to 47 different states, most of it professionally. And I worked with some great people in an industry that I really loved. And I did the same thing in one way, shape, or form for 41 years.
Now, why in that first year, or what pushed you towards the real estate side? Why not? Because you had a passion for sports.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
and sports law, I guess when you're it's not what it is now, where you're going to be you could be an athletic director, you could be an agent, you could be all those other things.
That wasn't the case back then.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. I don't even think at Pitt we had an elective that could cover something like that. And I knew after one or two classes that I didn't want to get involved in the prison system or represent criminals or alleged criminals. And I certainly didn't want to be a prosecutor, because on the scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being extremely liberal and 10 being extremely conservative, I like to think of myself down the middle. My daughter, who's very liberal, says, "Dad, you're an old white guy, and that's not going to change." so you could say you're moderate or even liberal, but you don't sell that to me. So anyway, I just knew that wasn't what I wanted to do. And then this job with GNC just came about because I had a good friend at law school who had done that job for a year and said he wanted to move on and do something different. He said, "You interested in interviewing?" And I said, "Sure." I needed a job. I was waiting tables, bussing tables for the most part, and this made sense to get something on my resume or to get my resume started. So I took the job and really never looked back.
And as in other professions, it's one of those when the door opens, you don't pass
you
the
gotta charge
door.
for it.
You gotta go.
No, that's a good line. That's from Hotel New Hampshire.
You like that?
Yeah, very good, very good.
So, 41 years in that industry, but your ties to Beta didn't really. When you left, they didn't sever. They were very strong. And your group is a very strong alumni group, I would say here.
Yeah. The house, the fraternities group is very strong. The age group of those men from Beta is still very strong. They're still, 90% of my core group of friends. And so we've worked together. We did fundraising back in the 80s to get a new house. We did work, unfortunately, with the college in the late 90s and early 2000s when we had to close the chapter. And we've remained strong. We have 3 alumni organizations, and I'm treasurer for all 3, which is hilarious because I took one accounting course and barely got through it. But when you're volunteering for things or where you're looking for volunteers, and this segues into what I do now, you don't tell people we can't use you.
Yeah.
You have to say, yes, we'll find a place.
So there's one urban, we've talked about a couple of the urban legends and myths around. I'm surprised we didn't touch on Larry Hummel. That was probably we'll get to Larry. I know we're gonna have to because we've told the other legends. So, but Chuck Kern told a story of the original Beta House when it went down. Mm-hmm. There was a videotape or a video somewhere that was passed around, and I wouldn't be doing my duty as a chucklehead if I did not ask, do you know of this tape existing?
No,
and
I don't. I'm interested to hear about it.
So there's a VHS tape apparently. So I guess Bubba or Chuck, somebody ran down, and as they were, the old house as it was being demolished, they filmed it.
Oh, wow.
And then the other side to that is and I believe it's in the great room when you go into Beta now, that is from the original house.
The coat of arms.
The coat of arms.
I can tell you about that.
And that one was taken to Bubba's. Was not. That was the story.
Okay.
That was the way the story
I can give you most of that story. So I came down with my ex-wife actually on a visit to Bethany when the house was closed. Mm-hmm. And they were already starting to demolish the interior. And we had black wooden block letters, Beta Theta Pi. And they were sitting on the table in the library. I think they had been on the outside of the house. Well, I took those home because I didn't want to see those get destroyed. But the coat of arms wasn't there.
Okay.
Several years later, a friend of mine, Mark Scorpion, who was a year behind me here and was a Beta, said, "Hey, I'm moving out of my apartment," or I think he had a duplex. "Can you take something for me?" And I said, "Sure." So he gives me this big trash bag. It's got the coat of arms in it.
Okay.
So Scorp protected it for some number of years. I don't even recall how many. By then, the new house was open. Mm-hmm. So I took it from him and kept it in my garage for a little while. And then I think I got Art Musicaro, who was the head of our house corporation for a number of years, to take it off my hands and get it rehabbed, and they hung it up in the new house. So could it have ended up at Bubba's when they first demolished the house?
Maybe that was
quite possibly, but I know where it ended up and how it got back here.
Well, and from that love of Beta and that was a cornerstone of what was your Bethany experience. Here we are today, 5 weeks into a new endeavor.
Yeah.
What brought you back?
It's not a very long story, but it's a tough story. I had been thinking about retiring because, like a lot of other professions, the pandemic turned my business upside down. At the last 5 years of my career as an attorney, I worked for a company that managed retail businesses and restaurants in airports. And so the last 2 years were a nightmare.
Yeah.
So I had pretty much been fed up with that and was thinking about retiring. And over Thanksgiving, or the week before Thanksgiving, I get a call from a friend of mine who tells me that her husband had passed away the night before. And I was devastated. He was probably my best Bethany friend over the years. Our families went on vacations together every summer for 10 years or so, and we had always been close.
Yeah.
And he met his wife because he was looking for office space back before work from home became a thing, and I recommended one of those office suite type operations in Pittsburgh, and she was the manager. So they met through my recommendation for him to go get office space. They started dating, they got married. They were together 21 years, which sounds like a long time, but when you're 64 or 5 years old, like we were, 21 years wasn't that long. Yeah. And so she was devastated by his passing. I certainly was devastated by his passing. And it put me to I got to get on with my life, because he and I had talked for a couple of years about when do you retire, how do you deal with it financially, et cetera, et cetera. And he retired during the pandemic. His name's Mark Snagaki. He retired during the pandemic, and so he had 1 year
of retirement.
And I just said, this is a sign. Well, less than a week after his service, I'm in LinkedIn and I see a posting that Bethany College is looking for a director of alumni engagement. And I just thought,
there's sign number
talk
2.
about a sign. And, my heart's always been with this place. I spend a lot of time here. I always have. And, to think that I could get paid to do something I was doing for free and really have some credibility was huge. And so I talked to Lori Weaver that night, and we had sort of a meeting of the minds right away. And, I went through the interview process, got to meet the staff, got to meet Dr. Caridi, who scolded me and said, please call me Jamie. We put our pants on the same way, one leg at a time. And that was a good sign for me.
Guy.
Yeah, that was a good sign for me. I know a lot of people have taken a lot of shots at him. I prefer to see what a person does.
Yeah.
As opposed to worry about what they may have said.
Yeah, words are words, and actions speak louder than them.
Absolutely.
We teach our children that, so why can't we?
Yeah, right. Why can't we live by that?
Yeah.
No. So yeah, it was a great interview process. I got to meet a lot of the people. They got comfortable with me. I got comfortable with them, and within I think 2.5 weeks of my first conversation with Lori Weaver, we had a deal. And I have been extremely pleased to be back here. Extremely gratified by the response. I've heard from literally hundreds of people, 90% of whom I didn't know personally.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because they heard Deno was such a great guy. It was because Deno was an alum who had been here back in the day and understood this school in this town and was willing to relocate from Pittsburgh to get closer, although apparently Wheeling wasn't close enough for some of the folks, but hey, I'll give them a pass on that.
Well, you can't win them all.
You can't win them all.
3 out of 4 ain't bad.
That's exactly right. So, yeah, it's been fantastic, and it's really giving me the opportunity to give back. And give back means something in the sense that I really do owe this place a lot. And I am thrilled to be in the position I'm in right now.
So, as somebody involved in alumni, and what is the official title for?
Well, we are the Department for Institutional Advancement and Marketing and Communications.
Okay.
Lori runs all of that. My particular role is Director of Alumni Engagement.
Okay.
Which suits me just fine, because what I don't ever necessarily want to be is the leader of beating people up for money. And I understand the need for that.
Yeah.
And I hope that enough people understand the need for that they can help us raise the funds we need to do the things we need to do to create more alumni by getting the enrollment up and having people come to school here.
Well, and I don't necessarily want to. I want to stay more with the alumni, because that's where you are. Right?
That's where I am.
So there's no. What would the status of our alumni? Are we still we're retaining a good number of alumni? Are we seeing a rise in maybe new alumni engagement? And how do we get those alumni who want to, maybe don't want to or can't financially donate but want to get involved in other ways? How can they do that?
Well, there's plenty of initiatives underway right now. And again, I've only been here 4.5 weeks, but I've seen so many positive things. One of the initiatives that the Alumni Council, which is an organization of volunteers who I liaise with, one of the things they're doing is a program called GOLD, and the acronym is Graduates of the Last Decade. And, it is so important, as one alum said to me last week, and I wish I could remember who said it, you got to get people understanding that they're going to be alums from the first day they set foot on campus as a freshman. And certainly that's true the first day they leave campus as a graduate.
Yes.
So those first 4 plus 10 years are critical. so we're going after that group and trying to stay in touch with them. The other challenge and the other area we're trying to develop initiatives is the old people, i.e. my generation, they don't go on Twitter.
No.
They don't follow Instagram.
No.
They're
Facebook,
lucky if
maybe.
they're on Facebook.
Maybe.
Exactly. And so you have to reach out to them in other ways. And so I've been spending a lot of time on the phone, sending emails to people whose email addresses we have, and acknowledging that you can please feel free to call me. You don't have to respond by email if you're more comfortable. And I've also started to try to get in front of people face to face. Yeah. Because in my business for 40 years, that was how we did everything. And you did a handshake. Yeah. And you did a face to face meeting. And I traveled all over the country to meet people face to face, when today that would never happen. No. But with my generation, you still have to do a lot of that. Absolutely. So there are initiatives to bring some of those folks back. You mentioned Hal Newman earlier. Yes. Hal and I have been talking about organizing sort of a grassroots efforts to get people back on campus to work, because that's not going to cost them anything except the cost of getting here. And if you live in Pittsburgh like I do or whatever, that's not a cost.
2230, or you can come the old way on 50.
I usually come one way and go home the
other. I used to go to work up in Pittsburgh. I'd go up 2230 and come back on 50 because it's just different.
It's something different when you have to drive an hour and 15 minutes each day, two ways. So we are trying to get that type of thing engaged. Now, the attorney in me knew right away that there were pitfalls at something like that.
There's liability. There's other things having people on campus.
Right. So especially in what is still the middle of the pandemic. Yes. So we're working with the administration. The buy-in has been great.
Now, is that more specifically that grassroots project? Is that more let's get you here in the summertime? Let's get you here when it's not the hustle and bustle of the day to day, and we can. I know that Old Main has been something people have talked about, and the Phillips or whatever. Just paint. If you want to paint,
there's trimming trees. There's painting. And we have alumni with all of those skill sets and all of that equipment and such. And I was very gratified about a week or so after I talked to Hal and we started to get this rolling. Somehow the word got around to Jamie Caridi, and he sent a note down to us and said, "Hey, I heard about this idea that somebody had to do this at Ohio Dominican. We did it twice a year, every year. So can you get some traction on this?" And we were able to write back and say, "Yeah, we've already started it. It's already been endorsed by Denny and Jerry and Bill Kiefer, et cetera, et cetera. We're just working out the details now." So it's good to see that everybody is of the same mindset as to the kinds of things we can do to engage alums. And there's the usual stuff. One of the things that we're sort of riding the wave of is, in a lot of people's minds, we had the best homecoming ever last year.
I agree.
And I certainly felt that way, and I felt that way that week.
Yeah.
Not when I started wearing the badge.
There was a huge build-up. There was a huge...
It was tremendous.
And the outpouring of people after the year of being told you can't come to Bethany.
Yes.
You saw what Bethany really meant, because the alumni came and it was a homecoming again.
Yeah, it really was. And so while I tongue-in-cheek said, well, we ought to just start doing it every other year or every 5 years so it can be that good again, we're gearing up for this year.
Well, and I know alumni weekend used to be kind of a big time, and that kind of, again, with everything else, with the pandemic and being a small school and getting people together, that threw a wrench there. But I guess the other question would be, so if we can get more alumni to come back, where are we going to put them when they come back? Because I know that the Gresh, being that it's now in a different use, and there's not much in other than Ogilvy that you can go to. What is there a plan? Is that something that...
If there's a plan, it will be part of the strategic plan that we've been hearing about. I am not privy to any such details yet, and I certainly have my own ideas as a guy who was in real estate development for 30-some years after my retail career started. But it is a real challenge. And I will acknowledge that I'm before I came to work here, I was part of the basketball reunion for the team from 1978 that I mentioned. And we were having trouble finding places to house 13 men.
Mm-hmm.
So I get the fact that it's tough. And Ogilvy's a great alternative. It so happened that weekend they had run a 2-for-1 special, so the place booked up.
Yeah.
So we don't have anything for February 18th through 20th there, but there's still that danger that I think Frank talked about on the show a little while ago. That is, do you want people jumping into cars after they've been drinking and drive these roads?
No.
And the answer, as Frank said at the time, was no, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be great to say, well, the guys from 1978 are all coming back, and we're going to have a great weekend, but nobody's going to have a drink? That's not going to happen.
In a fantasy world, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
It sounds great.
Yeah, it sounds great.
It's a great write-up.
Yeah. But, that's a challenge. It is a challenge, and I hope it's one that the administration addresses. I know that it's one that they're sensitive to. You can't put all the recruits up at the SAE house. Oh, by the way, we don't have one anymore.
No, that's out the signal.
Yeah, you can't put people up in that environment when they're high school seniors down here with their mom, like I was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, with certain buildings, I know what can we talk about what's going on, what the plan is for Sigma Nu? I know their alumni base very strong.
Yeah.
I guess we would be expecting them to be they're now in the process of making their comeback.
Yes.
And then you also have on the other end of town, the Point Breeze Mansion, the old Alpha Sig Mansion, which is there any plans or such for that? Because there's two. I know the Point Breeze Mansion specifically. That's a building that maybe could be an alumni welcome back. Here's some really nice rooms, bed and breakfast type.
Yeah. I agree with that. I'll start with the Sigma Nu house because I have some personal experience in my time back here. In fact, I spoke to Kevin Clancy and his wife Molly today. They're actually living in the house and working in conjunction with the Sigma Nu national and local alumni groups to rehab it. Some of our players who were SIGs are going to stay there for the basketball weekend. But yeah, they're doing a great job. I knocked on the door of the SIG house the other day, which in and of itself was kind of weird. and Molly was gracious and let me in, and I looked around a bit. They're doing a great job. Mm-hmm. And they like everything else, the physical plant is easy so long as you're willing to put in money and effort.
Yeah.
The tough part will be to get the brotherhood back online.
Yeah.
But the alumni group, led by people like Kerry McCann and Bob McCann, no relation as they say, are doing things to make sure that the SIGs get reestablished here. It took us at Beta a few years to make that happen. Mm-hmm. It'll probably take the SIGs a little bit of time. Certainly it will help to have a beautiful remodeled
off-campus house
to show to prospects when you're rushing them. They'll be back. Now, the Alpha SIGs, I do not have that much knowledge of. Mm-hmm. I understand that the college bought the property.
I believe so.
Yeah, the college bought the property, and there are some things that can be done with it, and I think the college will keep that in mind as they implement the new strategic plan. I don't know if it'll be a key factor. I'd just be guessing.
Yeah.
Like you and I, it would.
Well, and then the other, I didn't even think about it, but once you were talking about Sigma Nu, there's another house.
Yes, there
down
is.
there. And then now, I guess, can I ask you from your realty experience, that would be a pretty nice place to house some alumni. Parking wise, you're in town.
And it would be. I have not been in the old KA house since I went to school here. I know that it wasn't exactly the best place then.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the inside of the house looks like now.
But is that owned? That's owned by...
I'm assuming the KAs own that.
Okay.
But I know that also the college has purchased a lot of properties in town as they've become available. So I don't know what the status of that is. I don't want to lump it in with my general view of some of the properties around here, which I think a bulldozer would do very well with.
Goodbye.
Because, as a real estate guy, the land is often more valuable than the buildings that sit on it. And if we're going to do things as part of our new looking forward to make the town a better place, building some new stuff would be a good thing, I think.
And I think that maybe that gets missed a lot in translation as well. Is that we need to improve the college and the infrastructure there, but we also need to be thinking about, like you said, there's no social aspect for these students.
Right.
Why not find some things in town that we could? And I mean, that's easier said than done. There's a lot more that has to be.
Yeah, there is, but there are plans. There are people doing things behind the scenes, and we're at very early stages.
Yeah.
And I say we kind of generically. There are things being talked about, and there will be some momentum in that direction because you still have a lot of people that care an awful lot. And I don't know what it's like now, but when I was here, the urban legend or the rumor was, at that time there were almost 1,000 students.
That number just always comes out.
Yeah, but there were only 200 people in the town.
Yeah.
So the town and the college are inextricably linked, especially if you're the town.
Yeah. You need the...
You know, and I know maybe some of the townsfolk wouldn't agree with that, but it just, Bethany can't exist without the college.
Yeah.
Any more than the college can exist without the town. So I think there's a lot that can be done. There are a lot of people interested to do some things, and we'll see some positive steps.
So since you brought up urban legends, and before we get into those last 3 questions of the show,
okay,
Larry Hummel.
Oh,
let's hear it.
Larry, I know he was to some degree on the payroll when I was here. Supposedly he was a college maintenance person or whatever, but I'm sure it was just some stipend to sustain him. But Larry would come in the cafeteria and clean food off the trays as if, he didn't have a meal coming. But the rumor always was that once or twice a year, a limo would come into town and they'd pick him up and take him to Pittsburgh to meet with his stock broker or whatever, and that he'd gotten rich through, I think, Campbell's soup or something. And there was always someone who had seen the limo, just like everybody my age saw Bill Mazeroski's home run.
Yes.
So, there was
everybody was
someone.
in Forest Field that day.
Yeah, 250,000 people. So people would say they saw Larry's ride. Well, of course, fast forward to many years after I was gone from here, Larry leaves the college like $1 million or something.
The Hummel Fieldhouse.
The Hummel Fieldhouse. So there was some truth apparently to all of this. But yeah, he was a living legend when he was here, and his legend lived on after him.
So we've come to that point. We got 3 questions.
All right, I hope I can pass.
Well, I struggled with tests. You seem to do well with tests.
I was okay with tests.
So,
yeah.
Why Division III? Not just Bethany excluded. Why the Division III level if you're talking to a high school athlete?
Oh, I think it's critical. So many of my colleagues, friends, whatever you want to say, brothers, and I had this discussion at lunch today with Bill Kiefer.
What a man.
They wanted to play sports, but they didn't necessarily want to focus on one. I mean, I was here with guys who could have played Division I sports and done very well. Mm-hmm. Scott Lance was a punter on the football team. He easily could have kicked for a Division I school, but he wanted to play baseball too. Fran Haas was a leader on the basketball team. I think he was then the only player who had been the number 1 player in the WPIAL 2 years in a row, his junior and senior year.
Okay.
He could have played basketball at a Division I school. I mean, he was 6 foot tall and could dunk the ball, and we had guys 6'5" who couldn't. So, I mean, Franny could have played at a D1 school, but he was a baseball guy. His father played in the Cardinal organization for 10 years. So Fran wasn't going to go somewhere where we couldn't play baseball too. So, I mean, that's why D3. And my son played tennis on an undefeated team in Mount Lebanon, and he was, probably number 10 guy out of 14. But they were so good they could win matches with their second 7.
Yeah.
He wanted to play tennis. He wasn't going to go to Division I school. He went to a Division III school and played and won an NCAA title and just had a blast.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is so important to college life to offer those opportunities, and it's so much better than when I was here, because whatever people say about Title IX, it's great to see the men and the women having equal opportunity.
Yes.
And that's, when I was here, my big brother was a wrestler, and the wrestling program was done away with to make way for a women's program. And I don't get into the editorializing about whether that's good or bad. I just know it's great that we have these sports for men and women who come here, and the chance to play hoops here, even though you would never have gone to a big school to play.
Yeah.
So yeah, Division III, love it. Yeah, I just met Jill Wilson today, and we're going to talk on Friday. Can't wait to get engaged with her about all the things Bethany athletic-wise. It's a large part of this experience.
Leading into Bethany, and because they're a Division III school, what would you say right now? And I've seen this question a couple of times from alumni, so I'm sure people are going to hang on this one. What is the brand? What is Bethany? What, from an outside point of view, if you're looking at it from a sales model, what is an alumni selling as Bethany?
I think that we have to stay true to our roots, in that we're a small liberal arts college of national distinction, and I know that there are people who say that tongue in cheek these days. I won't. I think that there's no reason we aren't that, and certainly no reason we can't strive to fulfill that. Yes, times have changed. There were people who weren't much older than me who came here for one reason, and that was to stay out of Vietnam.
Yeah.
That obviously has changed.
Although it could be heading back.
I said no politics,
There's
no
religion. I was just saying
politics, no religion.
We might be seeing an influx of students running to Brooke County. There's a couple other schools through. You got Ohio County right over the border. There's two more schools down there.
I know. So yeah, I think the brand needs to remain basically the same. And look, I will admit that when I was here, I didn't understand the import and the impact of the Disciples of Christ Church and faith on this campus. I've learned more about that in my 5 weeks as an alumni engagement director than I did in my 5 years close to the campus. So we have to remain true to that. I think it would be unfair to the generations of alums who were associated with the church not to stay true to that.
And to the guy. There's one pretty big guy with the disciples.
Yes.
His picture right there in Old Main. He's very important.
Yes. So I think that still needs to remain the brand. But I don't think we need to be a school where half the current students are playing a sport.
No.
I think we need to get more people in who can shine academically and professionally outside of the sports world. Like even the NCAA says, 95% of our student athletes are not going to go on to be professional athletes. And I think that we need to attract more people.
Band.
The communications
Sciences.
department has been great, and it seems as if they still are very engaged, both with alums and recruiting students. Dave Sims, Faith Daniels, Tori Tolley, all these people that became national media figures from my era. We need more of those. We need more William H. Macy's and Fran McDormand's.
And Jeff Seglins and Marie DeParis.
Exactly.
Marie Z. I'm not going to try to pronounce her last name, but Marie Z.
Yeah. We need people that can represent the brand by what they do. And that's the brand. The brand is success in the real world.
So we are the brand.
We are the brand.
If we're speaking as alumni, not as the alumni engagement guy, you and me, we're the brand.
We're the brand, yes.
Because our success breeds the success down that ladder.
It gives us credibility when we're talking about students coming here. The alums, the recruiting office, the admissions office, whatever, can point to guys like you and say, hey, look, you want to see about the kind of alum we have? Tune in. And so that's really important. I think we have to focus on mentoring and providing internships and getting the students here to realize that if you come here and you work hard here, you can get out of here and have a head start, because alums will mentor you, alums will find you jobs, they'll hook you up with people in the big towns around here, whether it's Pittsburgh or if you want to go to DC, or there's nowhere where we don't have somebody.
Well, and again, it's that, as we said at the beginning of the segment, when the door opens, you don't
yeah.
don't walk away from the
No.
open door hoping for another one. You go through
No.
the first open door and
Yeah.
start.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, lastly, I'm a senior in high school. You're recruiting me to Bethany. Why Bethany? What does Bethany do? What does it do for me? Why? I'm not an athlete. I want to come here for, let's say, let's go psych. I want to come here for psychology.
Yeah.
Why Bethany? As a former psych major here.
You will get as close to a one-to-one relationship with your faculty and your peers as you can have.
Mm-hmm.
You will become a part of a family that draws people like myself back here after 45 years. That's one of the things I'm learning about the work that I do have to dabble in terms of fundraising. You have to be the example.
Yeah.
You can't tell people why this is a great place to come to school. You have to show them by being here. And I think that's why it's important to have as many alums as possible active in the administration and the faculty and the community as we can get.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to convince new students. Somebody walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Well, it's ironic. That's, I think, a perfect way to wrap up the show is we talked about the guy, big disciple of Christ, Alexander Campbell, and he had his there was a quote that I've used a lot in my head. It's the way I look at the show, especially for the alumni tour, and that's the community has no connect if there's no communication. The community breeds the communication breeds the community.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that we're on the right track of heading that direction. The town halls are great. I hope that they continue. It's just it's a great not even quarterly update. It's a
we've got one March 1st with Dr. Caridi, and then rumor has it, we've talked rumors, that I may be the third guest, although I may have just spilled everything I could possibly say on the town hall.
Well,
they may skip over me now.
Maybe if we could work together, I'd like to. If you could pass a message along to Dr. Caridi, I'd love to have him on the show. Love him, give him an opportunity to introduce himself as who he is as a person and where he comes from, and the whole thing. Same to Joe Wilson, correct?
Yeah, Joe Wilson,
the new athletic director, and that's, I think, ironic that with a female athletic director, female assistant athletic director, and Jan Forsty being as influential in being the first woman athletic director collegiately in the state of West Virginia. I think it's ironic that we now have a woman athletic director here at Bethany. I think that's a great.
I think it's tremendous.
It's a great push for women in sports as that field grows.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I want to say thank you.
Thank you. This has been a tremendous experience.
It's been a good time. It was better than our last meeting. I wasn't as nervous. I was nervous the first meeting. This one, I was like, well, he's going to talk. I just got to be here.
I was nervous too. I thought, I'll never shut up. So.
I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is the Dingo Talk Alumni Tour, Deno Emili Class of 1978. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. It's Dingo Talk. You can go on Twitter. Twitter and TikTok are Dingo Talk, and then Instagram it's Dingo_Talk, because somebody already had Dingo Talk without the underscore, so we had to, the social media world, you got to change your characters, and
somebody probably has my name as a website.
Well, every Thursday 10 a.m. sometimes we have alumni from Bethany, sometimes we have different people, but make sure you tune in, follow us on the platforms, hit subscribe, and we will catch you next week.